Well, thank you for that introduction, and thank you for having me here. I'm a psychologist and a neuroscientist, and as I understand the literature, we are shaped in our lives and in our thinking by our past experiences. So I grew up in Montreal in Canada. The elementary school that I went to actually had a girls' entrance and a boys' entrance. And one of my formative experiences happened on a day when it was pouring rain and I had no raincoat, and I lived closer to the boys' entrance. And I tried to leave by school by the boys' entrance, and I got caught. And I was suspended for a week, and my mom had to come to school to hear how disobedient I was. And you might think that that's odd, but at the time, in this country and in Canada, in many taverns, there were boys and girls, men's and women's entrances, not only for schools, but also for taverns. Taverns. So we the women, we the girls, were being protected from the boys and from the men, and that's why the entrances were separate. In my high school, we were also protected. The academically weak students were tracked into shop for boys and cooking and sewing for girls. Academically stronger students were also tracked. Girls were directed to take Latin. I took Latin for 4 years. Boys were cajoled into taking math. We were being protected from failure. When I went to graduate school here in New York, the dean of the graduate school told me that as a married woman, I would never succeed in academia, and I would save myself a lot of trouble by just leaving early on. There's an auditorium named after him, huge, fancy auditorium, for his contributions to higher education. You might think that this is something from history, something that only happened in the past. But in fact, there's a very long tradition of women being controlled and regulated. We're protected from the mental rigors and responsibilities of voting. We're protected from the decisions around childbearing. We're protected in many aspects of our lives. Being protected and regulated is part of the social norm for women. It has a very long tradition in history, and it's manifest in many different ways. And we're often protected by boys and men. I was lucky as a child that I was caught leaving by the wrong door, because early on I understood and figured out that the rules for protecting me didn't make that much sense, and on top of that, they were always changing. So, what is it that we should really think about? What you really need to know is how to protect yourself. One of my colleagues, who's a social psychologist, told me that what I have is very low rejection sensitivity. That means I'm insensitive to rejection. So I was lucky to have insensitivity to rejection, but we don't have to be rejection insensitive in order to follow our dreams and our ambitions. So I've been incredibly lucky to spend my career here at Barnard. As part of my work at Barnard, I've had brilliant students. From this dignified position, I co-chaired a committee that looked forward to what kind of research should be done on the International Space Station on behalf of NASA. I was on the Jon Stewart show discussing problems of animating mannequins. That was before he got into politics. He found science funny. I'm an elected member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences that was founded in 1750 by our founding fathers. And probably most importantly in this context, I spent a year working at the National Science Foundation, helping them look to the future on how to spend their budget. They support science and technology in the United States, and I spent a year helping the director of the NSF look forward to how to best spend their budget to advance research and education in the United States. So I stand here before you today to think about how to advance research and education, specifically in the context of women and computing. In my own laboratory, I study the brain. The brain. I study a small nucleus called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, where the red arrow points, and that nucleus is a brain clock. That clock is made up of 20,000 cells. And those 20,000 cells are each clocks, and they work together somehow to produce a daily signal that tells you when to wake up, when to go to sleep. It sends signals through your whole body. That's the reason that you don't get hungry while you're sleeping, because the organs that stimulate hunger are not active when you're sleeping. So I study the brain clock, and one of the ways that you have to study those 20,000 cells is to use computers and statistics and modeling and huge sets of data for computations. Now, I became interested in the problems of women in computing through my own research. The work that I do really involves a lot of computational skills, and year after year, I couldn't find Barnard students to engage in that work. Now, the Barnard students take laboratory jobs at about $10 an hour because first they learn a little bit, but also they need the extra money. So the students earn about $10 an hour doing laboratory research, but they often need more money, and my students were showing up in the laboratory very tired, very often, because they had been babysitting the night before. Babysitting gets you $15 or $20 an hour, but you don't learn anything, and you're working on somebody else's schedule. My own son was an art history major at Columbia, art history, and he had taken some computing classes, and he was making $80 to $100 an hour. So it drove me crazy that the girls were doing this work that didn't buy them anything, took up their time, made them exhausted, and it was very little money. So what is the problem here? If we look to what women have been doing in the sciences and engineering generally, you can see from the 60s to about now, there's a gradual increase in the numbers of women in those fields. But if you follow the red line, you'll see that it peaked around 1980, and then there's a decline. The next slide will show you that in somewhat more detail, and it looks as though the numbers of women in computing rose rapidly to about the 80s. About 37% of the people in computer science were women, and then it plummeted to about 17%. So what is going on? What is it that women want? What is it that women have to do? One of the ways I learned what was happening was in meeting with one of my advisees. I'm going to call her Barbara. That's not at all her real name. Barbara is the most amazing person I've ever met. She was, one semester, she took 27 credits. 15 is the norm. She took 27 credits and got all A's. Last semester, she took a computer science class, and she got a B+, and she comes in and tells me that this is the most difficult class she ever took. So that was interesting, and I asked her, okay, why was it such a difficult class? Why were you having such trouble? She said she walked into the class and she had zero background. She didn't know anything that you needed to know in order to take an introductory level computer science class. This is a student who had taken physics, who had gotten A's in all her science classes, and she had no background for computer sciences. So why did my art history son have the background to breeze through computer science, and why did she have none? She said the class was huge, 200 people. She said that it was like walking into Japan and trying to learn the language without having anybody teach you when she couldn't really even hear the sounds. That's what it felt like to her. And worst of all, she said she was afraid to put up her hand to ask a question. This is the only time she's never asked a question. She couldn't ask a question because if she said something dumb, she would not only be dumb herself, but she would be representing all the women in the class, the small minority, and they would all be dumb. Okay, so what are we going to do about this? I'm one of these people who see something, if you can do something, do something. So I went to 3 generations of provosts and asked if we could do something by our coursework. And eventually I went to Deborah Spar, the Barnard president, who sent me to Kitty Colbert. And Kitty Colbert did something. What did Kitty do? She set up the Athena Digital Design Agency. I'm going to call it ADA so I don't stumble over the name. ADA. She set up ADA with Natalie Molina Nino as the leader, a very effective and efficient leader. ADA was set up. Also, a number of my friends and family and the Sloan Foundation contributed some funds to make ADA run. As Hillary Clinton wrote, it takes a village. We had a village. What does ADA do? ADA teaches students to do web design. ADA is set up on a model like the Barnard babysitting agency. My kids were getting babysitting jobs through the student-run Barnard babysitting agency. ADA is set up like that as a student-run business. ADA teaches the students how to do web design, and once they know how to do it, they're enabled to offer web design services to the community, small businesses, nonprofits, anybody who needs online help, maybe you. So ADA helps students get pocket money, and it's a fantastic start for the students. But we need to do more than that. They want to build on their web design experience. So far, the ADA effort has enabled the kids to feel like they're in control and they're ready to take risks and they can do it. What we need to do now is to bring computing into the academic courses so that no matter what major students take, whether they're art history majors or literature or physics or chemistry or psychology, they know how to use the computing tools. So the Barnard faculty got together and created a knowledgeable group and introduced 5 new courses this year into the curriculum where the students do programming as their exercises and they address real research questions that the professors are studying in the classroom. So we're spreading the use of the tools that will be absolutely necessary in the future into the broader academic community. So in looking to the future, we need to be able to understand technology, to understand the language of computers, and to be fearless in learning the new skills to take advantage of the changes that are going to come. And we need to do that no matter whether your expertise is in shop or in cooking or in physics or in math, etc. These tools are ubiquitous and they're general. So looking forward, we have created a pipeline, we have a critical mass of people, and we're enabled to incorporate technology as a language that's a universal language in this country, a universal language of communication. Barnard has started to open those doors, and what we want to do in the future is find every entrance into these opportunities and push open every one of those doors.